What's good, everybody? We got some juicy malcompliance stories coming today. Let's jump right in. Here we go. Check your contracts, government salary employees. So I work IT in a public school. I'm a 12-month employee who works 40 hours a week, 5 days. I'm constantly staying late, sometimes an hour or more, or coming in early. I don't get any overtime, but sometimes the job calls to be late. No big deal in my eyes. I get a half-hour lunch, salaried at $55K. Most days, I bring my lunch in, but sometimes I don't have leftovers or anything to bring in. There's a convenience shop that sells sandwiches and chips, which I usually go to whenever I don't bring in lunch. Since the sandwiches are made by order, they don't have an option to call in, so you have to wait for it. It takes around 12 or 13 to get there and back, so before my lunch break, which is at 12 noon every day, I'll run to the shop, get a sandwich and a Coke before my lunch break, and come back in time for lunch. Now, this isn't every day, it's pretty rare, maybe twice a month. My boss knows I stay late and never ask for overtime or anything like that. He told me staying late was part of my job when necessary. I usually don't have an issue with him, but today I did. I ran out at 11:45, got a sandwich, came back and took a lunch from 12 to 12:30. When I was just getting off my lunch, he called me into his office, asked me what time I went to lunch, told him what time. Then he asked me if I ran out before my break. I told him I did. He told me he was writing me up for stealing time for running out before my break. This is strange, considering this has never been a problem and I've never gotten a write-up. So I tell him that's fine and he has to do what he has to do. Then I decide to look at my contract. Guess what? I get 2 15-minute breaks in addition to my half-hour lunch. So now I'll be taking a 15-minute break whenever I feel like it, thanks to my union. Ah, the good old union. Companies hate it, but employees love it. Just let the man get a Sammy and a Coke. It'll take him like 13 minutes. Can't work when I'm hungry, damn it. Please change your Facebook review to a positive one, okay? A few years ago, I bought a new shed/sunroof combination for my garden. It was pretty expensive and thus I also paid for the company to build it. Knowing me, I would mess up, so I was happy to pay for a professional to come fix that for me. The shed was a roof with the bitumen topping. It looks like very thick sandpaper. The professional builder tacked it in place and that was that. I asked him if no glue would be needed to keep it in place, but obviously I know nothing and that was a dumb question. Lo and behold, 6 weeks later, a mild storm blew off the entire bitumen topping off the roof. I called the company only to be told I should have known this would be a temporary roof and these need to be changed like every year. Can you smell the BS? I replied, it has only been 6 weeks, you need to come fix this. Nope, a storm was the reason for damage, act of God, no help from them. Well, okay, they promised to send a new roll of bitumen so I could replace it myself. I waited. No bitumen. I went to their Facebook page to find lots of people complaining about similar stuff. I wrote a review warning people not to buy their expensive sheds as they get built wrong and any damage resulting from this does not get resolved by them whatsoever. Mind you, this shed was over 1,000 euros. A half hour later, I get a phone call from said company. They tell me they will come the next day to put on expensive shingles to make up for the damage, at their own cost. But I do have to change my review. I waited for them to come fix it and they held to their promise, so did I. I wrote on their page how they came and fixed my roof, even exchanged the material for a much more expensive solution, the very next day, at their own cost. Needless to say, this caused a shitstorm of customers demanding the same solution. You're welcome, assholes. Oh sure, I'll definitely give you a positive review, but I'm gonna let everybody know just exactly what you're doing here. Just in case they need some help with their crappy product as well. My neighbors wanted to call a professional to mark their property line. My parents agreed. This was a long time ago, but I remember it clearly. We moved into a community with tight space in between our house and our neighbors, and we didn't like them being able to see into our kitchen. We put up a bunch of plants, costing thousands, but my parents thought it would be worth it. A week later, my parents awoke to the plants completely chopped down. My father was furious and marched down to our neighbor's house. He told my father the plants were on his property line, therefore he had total right to take them down. He warned that if anything were to go on his property again, he would report us to the authorities immediately. Later that day, my father called the company that put in the plants, and with the warranty we could have them replanted next week for no charge. We made sure there was no way it was on our neighbor's property. However, a few days later, we caught him chopping them down at 2 a.m. We called the police upon obstruction of property, and after a chat with my neighbor, he decided to call a professional and mark his property line. My father agreed. A few days later, I got home to find orange tape in my neighbor's yard. Apparently, his fence was 11 feet over our property line. We watched as he took his fence down, completely furious. Within the next month, we were enjoying our new space and privacy in our backyard, and my neighbor ended up losing a fourth of his backyard. My neighbor ended up having to pay almost $10,000 for the destruction of our property, and we got to plant our plants again. All I gotta say is, tree law. If you harm or damage a tree on someone else's property, you could be found liable for up to 3 times the value of that tree. And I'll tell you, some trees go for quite a hefty price. May I see your ID? I work as a cashier at a commissary, a military grocery store. The way we handle proof of membership is by scanning the customer's ID card at the cash register. We have the ability to bypass this for workers who aren't in the military, but only for items that will be consumed on site. Now that the background is out of the way, onto the story. One slow day, I decided to go on my scheduled break a few minutes late, as we had most of our cashiers out on break already. As soon as we had enough back that my coworkers wouldn't be unduly burdened by my absence, I close up and turn in my till. Apparently, the cash office disliked this, as she started to mutter about us taking breaks whenever we liked. Now, I'd like to point out that not only do we have 6 cashiers just come back from break, we only had 3 customers in the past hour. Additionally, if we didn't handle breaks ourselves, we would have to leave work early or accrue overtime. And Lord help you if you got so much as a minute of overtime. Now, being the nice guy I am, I ask if she wants me to open back up. She then spends the next 5 minutes ranting about how we just come to work to take breaks and we don't follow directions. Finally, she takes my till and I go on break, but she'd really pissed me off due to some accusations of lying during her rant. Still, there isn't much I can do, or so I thought. Come the end of my shift, who should I see but that same cash office teller with a cart full of groceries in my line. I wait for her to unload all of her groceries before I ask for her ID. She says she left it in her car and I should just bypass it. Since I had just been ranted at about my work ethic, I stand firm. I never would have expected what happened next, but the memory still warms my shriveled heart. She starts going through the 5 stages of grief. I've chosen a few lines from each stage, but they lasted an average of 4 minutes each. First stage is denial. Oh, you don't really need my ID, do you? Stop playing. Second stage, anger. My husband served in the military. Of course I have my ID. Who do you think I am? Third stage is bargaining. Please, I know you do this for other workers. Just do it this once. The fourth stage is depression. Do I really have to walk all the way to my car to get my ID? And finally, after 20 minutes of alternatively ignoring her and citing policy, she reaches the last stage, acceptance, and begins loading her groceries back into her cart. I'm gonna need to see your ID, Karen. I know you work over there in that cash office. Show me what you got. I'm gonna need to see some ID. Sure, I'll take free money. A new gas station convenience store opened up in my area, and I went to do some shopping. Now, this isn't your normal gas station. It has a restaurant, fishing, and hunting section to go along with the gas station. It had just recently opened and was really busy. I spent $75 and some change and paid with $100. On the way out, I realized I got $10 too much change back. I went back in to return the extra money to the cashier, and as I walked up, he said, "The line ends back there," in a very smart-ass tone. I wait in the long line. When I finally get back to the cashier, I tell him he gave me the wrong change. He immediately blurts out that he gave me the correct change and starts to make a scene. He cuts me off every time I try to interject. Finally, he tells me to leave and keep my change the way it is because it's most definitely correct. At this point, I'm tired of messing with him and decide to maliciously comply. I give up and say fine. He finally quit talking long enough for me to tell him his drawer is going to be $10 short because he gave me too much money. His expression is priceless as I go out the door. I live in a small town and know the owner of the business, so I called him the next day and told him what happened. He told me that the register had come up over $100 short, and he was none too happy. He was glad that I called because the cashier was trying to cover up his screw-ups and even gave me a $20 gift card. I can't believe they went back and waited in line. Ooh, that karma, that $10 karma is going to eat you away if you don't wait in that long line and pay it back. Good grief. It's $10. If he's making a big deal out of it, get the hell out of there and enjoy your free money. Rear-end my trailer and demand the police? Sure, no problem. So this happened on my bachelor's party about 3 years back. I took my guys on a week-long canoe camping trip. My father volunteered to haul all our canoes behind his new Ford Explorer Canyonero. He even got a canoe trailer for the event. Before leaving, we checked the local laws of the destination. The destination had a law that anything towed cannot be 4 foot past the rearmost support, strut, frame, etc., without displaying a red marker or flag. Before leaving, my father made absolutely sure that the canoes were within that 4 foot mark, one coming literally right within 0.25 inches. Then, in an additional show of safety, he tied a nice red bandana on the back of the longest canoe, which happened to have a metal bow and loop for tie-down anchoring, which was perfect to tie the flag on. This is the compliance part, not malicious in intent, but will come to be in consequence. The camping trip went well. On the way back, my mom was following behind the Canyonero in her own sedan carrying extra groomsmen from the trip. My parents volunteered to drive them back after their car broke down on the way up. In a day-long drive home, we hit a semi-major city, touristy area, in rush hour. As we are driving on the main route, crossing an intersection, an impatient Jeep driver cuts in between my mom and dad, pulling in between the Canyonero with canoe trailer and my mom's car with no room to spare. Traffic suddenly stopped and my dad had to slow down to a stop quickly. The Jeep drove straight into the canoe trailer. Now, the longest canoe was upside down on the trailer and had that metal bow, as shown in the picture. The Jeep was an SUV, and she drove into one lower canoe with her bumper and into/under the lower canoe with her hood. We felt the bump in the Canyonero and then another bump. She backed up and out from under the canoes. Her bumper impaled on a lower canoe, and her hood drove under the metal bow of the upper canoe. When she reversed, she effectively peeled her hood like a tin can opener. My dad and the female driver of the Jeep got out of their SUVs. She was a mid-50s woman from Jersey with a "let me see your manager" haircut, and she was in a rush to get home immediately. She commented how she owned a vacation home in the area and how he damaged her brand new Jeep before citing local laws and said he needed a red flag, which he didn't have. It had blown off on the many-hour highway trip. My father commented that he's carrying many big red canoes home, and she was such an impatient driver that she cut off my mom who was following him before plowing into the big red canoes. The Jeep lady commented that it was probably a scheme for both my mom and dad to try and trick people into getting between them before stopping and forcing others to hit them for the insurance money. She threatened to sue him for damages to her SUV in addition to distress and one or two other things I couldn't remember. She demanded the police come immediately to her aid to note the details for her up-and-coming lawsuit. "I already called them," my dad confidently said as he'd immediately called them after being rear-ended before getting out of the car. "Good," she said smugly. Just then, a police cruiser pulled up and had to block rush hour traffic. A mid-20s-something cop got out and Jeep lady immediately was all over him to harangue him about this alleged entrapment scheme, forcing her to drive into a trailer with giant red canoes. She quotes the local law and forces the officer to get out a tape measure and check for the 4-foot rule. The police officer, obviously annoyed at this woman who rear-ended a trailer and then is claiming to be the victim, says that my father is within code. She says, "No, he's not. Measure again." He does so. He calls her over to show that the canoe is indeed just within the 4-foot rule and does not require a red marker flag. She says, "Well, check his brake lights. I couldn't see any." The officer quotes a local law saying that the brake lights must be visible at standing height at a certain distance. He then proceeds to use the measuring tape she forced him to bring out to measure that exact distance. Stood there and told my father to go hit his brake pedal. My father does so and both trailer brake lights engage. The officer comments he's legal, and the woman berates him that he's wrong and says, "Well, I couldn't see those taillights. I was much closer than that." The officer smirked and said, "Do you think that may have been the problem, ma'am?" Long story short, he wrote the police report to state how my father was within every inch of local laws, and that not only did this woman rear-end him, but that she must have been extraordinarily inept to rear-end a trailer full of giant 18-foot red canoes. My father ended up being awarded the cost of 2 new canoes and a trailer from her insurance agency, who found her 100% at fault. It's always the lady with the "let me see your manager" haircut in the SUV following too close. Is it not? Here's some pics of the aftermath. Look at this Jeep. Oh man. Just a scratch. It'll buff right out. Alright, that's gonna do it for this one. Let me know what you all think, and we'll see you all in the next one. Peace.